All right, so I want you to basically explain the study that you posted the other day and some of the findings in it.
The lower arm slot study?
Yeah.
Well, I thought the coolest part was that it found that absolutely no difference among velocity, absolutely no difference among like success rate, and the only differences were all positive, which were like lower stress on the arm, right? I think accuracy improved. I might be blurring a couple there, but I think, as always, when you're like reading research, it's very easy to write a provocative title. It's very hard to read through that title and understand that, like, no, not everybody should just go like that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's what gets lost when you read research, just flat out.
So like the first takeaway I had from it was, okay, adjusting arm slot is gonna have like huge ramifications on ball flight and the metrics that you have as well. So, you know, somebody reading that study might think, okay, I need to drop my slot to get into a more efficient pattern. It's not always the case for anyone. For me specifically, when I was playing, high slot supinator was the way I was kind of classified, right? As I've started to explore different ways of throwing, there's a whole range that I have on the lower side to get different movement profiles. So I'm gonna basically throw my stock fastball right now without thinking about mechanics, how I would typically throw, even coming out of like where I was when I retired.
Sure.
So we'll start with just like a normal fastball.
Ooh, I'm curious. And so, what are you thinking? Which is just like, okay, hey, so 22 once. It's a vertical fastball.
Pretty vertical fastball, but
Yeah.
higher release height, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
where
yeah,
I ran
yeah.
into trouble was, you know, it was carrying okay, but the angle on it wasn't flat enough to get by anyone.
Sure.
So I pretty much leaned sinker the whole time, and then I'd have basically that classic supinator profile with a little cutter, you know, seam shifted change, and then like a downward working curveball, which didn't fit the profile at all. So basically the classification kind of felt like it bottled me into an area where I didn't have a lot of options, especially for left-handed hitters.
The dangers of buckets, right?
Right.
Like, which is like, you know, a bucket is great to point a direction, but I think ultimately a lot of times those buckets need to be porous. They
Yeah.
need to allow the water and the ideas to flow out of them and allow people to like maybe be in two buckets or expand upon that. And yeah, I definitely think that's like one of the risks of research, right? Is like, forget the fact that like you understand how you're gonna lower this arm slot right now, right? How many people read that study and were like, oh, I just moved my arm down?
Yeah, most guys, right?
Right.
So for me, if I'm gonna try and maybe drop my slot on a pitch to get more side to side, the first thing I'm gonna do is actually angle a little bit this way, because I want my stride direction to be a little bit more closed off. The next thing I'm gonna do...
What do you think that's gonna do?
I'm basically trying to limit my ability to like get into extension.
That's pretty cool. And so like the close off you feel will limit your want to peel back that way.
Correct.
It's counterintuitive to what I would have thought.
But what you found in what you were reading in the study basically is those lower slot guys, when they get to release, basically their spine angle was pretty much upright, right? There wasn't a ton of flexion.
There was not as much flexion, no. And there was not contralateral tilt.
So what I'm gonna actually lean into when I take off is a little bit more flexion. Because I'm gonna load into flexion, and then when I get to release, it's gonna be more of an uphill rotational pattern.
Cool.
Rather than something where I'm starting extended and then getting to that tilt and flexion.
Yeah, the flexion.
So we'll throw a couple of sinkers from that setup. A little bit more closed off, a little bit more flexion.
Now that's a sinker as opposed to a four seam?
Correct. And you can see we're down like 5 inches on release height there, a little bit more to the side.
Can you throw a four seam like that?
Yep, we'll throw a four seam from the same. I'm guessing this will be a little bit more ride run. Kind of actually scooped across that, but 15 and 12.
Yeah, so you dropped efficiency, and kept the same horizontal, so you weren't able to get on the side of that.
Yeah, and we'll go one more time with that, see if I can find it. We'll actually have Jay set up a little bit inside.
Okay.
Came out of it.
Yeah, you feel like you're conscious of it, right? You're pushing it that way. I mean, obviously, yeah, way better profile. We didn't get same velo, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so like I don't feel like my arm action is any different there.
Really?
It feels the same. It feels like I'm just taking away a little bit more back rather than vertical.
It looked like half the effort too.
Right. So it might be a better.
Yeah, that's
profile
frustrating for you, huh? I can imagine, like, you know, being done and then, you know, exploring those things.
Can I actually go like one more thing off of this? So what this can open up for me is a way more side-to-side profile. So a pitch I never had was a sweeper.
Yeah.
Struggled my whole life. Tried every
to get
grip.
on the side.
Everything was too high for me to actually get any of that around the baseball. So that same load-in actually leads itself to me getting to the correct spot on the sweeper. So I'll actually have Kenny come around here. So a little bit more flexion, a little bit more closed off. And then I'm feeling like I'm actually working uphill on the baseball rather than trying to turn it down.
Damn.
And that's a sweeper I never had. So I'll go back to what I had. So I'll go back to like kind of my stock setup. So I'll go back to the middle, a little bit more upright in my setup, and I'll just work a four seam towards the top here. And what I had off of that is a curveball. So everything I'm doing right now is just feeling posture and alignment and allowing where my setup to take the direction where I want it to go. So we'll go curveball off of that. So a little bit more up and down, not the greatest pitch, but you get the idea there of what the profile difference can be from those.
Yeah. So like, okay. Number one, you can see why you are a professional. Like having the capacity to feel what you just felt is often very elusive to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like the likelihood that a high school kid is going to be able to manipulate their body, forget even like how much of the manipulation just occurred at the hand, right?
So I used to think everything happens through the hand.
Yeah.
And when I actually started thinking about like where I wanted my posture to get to, the hand kind of gets itself to where it needs to go.
Sure, that's the like adage of arm along for the ride type mentality. How are you, all right, let me back up. What I love about that is that it had no discussion of moving the arm slot, right? The rib cage, the posture, your direction, like you're indicating, that dictates where the arm is coming out of. How do you come to understand moving this way creates that action for you?
I guess I've, there's a lot of different ways that I processed it, but I gave myself some room to explore in a way that I don't think most high-level throwers do. I think they're really tied to their setup and their stock fastball throw. It's what got them to that level typically.
Sure.
The problem with that is what gets you there can also get you stuck too. So what can beat someone at the high school and college level is probably not going to beat someone at the pro level.
Yeah, well,
right?
Especially when all of a sudden they have reports on you, they start figuring it out. It's this same thing like, hey, the cue or the correction that you've made or that you've told yourself in your mind, all of a sudden will eventually stop working. Right? And it either stops working because you got stronger or weaker, or you have an injury, or they've adapted to you.
Yeah. And what you'll see across baseball, we've had these trends with sweeper usage going up. We'll have the kick change get super popular this year. So all these pitch metrics kind of become in vogue, and guys are constantly chasing them. I think, as a young minor league guy coming up through the system right now, if you're not exploring those pitches in the offseason, you're doing yourself a disservice because, there might be a season where a splitter becomes super popular, And if you've never even experimented with the opportunity to throw that pitch for yourself, you're limiting your outcomes, and you're basically relying on, I hope my fastball velocity is good enough. I hope that slider that I throw is good enough. Where, like, you want to be able to problem solve as a pitcher. And when you shut yourself down to maybe one option, one slot, you're not allowing yourself to explore, like what you could be potentially.
I have so many things off of that. Like, well, first, what initially hits me is like, it's so cool to hear about the art of pitching again, as opposed to like what just gets sold on social media. And, look, the name that we have on our shirt, right, is just like, oh, just go out and blow it by everybody. But like, you watch guys that throw 100 and the ball gets turned around all the time. The nuance that you're mentioning is the difference maker as you continue to rise. And I think the question I have is, how do you know which pitches you should be messing with, as opposed to just throw the gambit at it and try every single one?
Yeah, I guess you need to understand your foundational pitch probably.
Okay.
Whether that is an off-speed pitch or a fastball. Building off of that, and I guess I have a different thought process than a lot of people. I think they're very protective of their arsenal and what they have. And as someone who basically got to a point where I couldn't move any further because my pitch arsenal wasn't diverse enough and I didn't throw hard enough, I leaned into, okay, I'm going to get the velocity to get me over the hump. I got the 2 miles an hour. Still was at that 90, 93, touch 94, 95, whatever. It wasn't enough. I should have opened more doors for myself, seen what was behind it, and at least given myself a chance to showcase these pitches,
right.
Give myself a little bit more versatility in how I could handle righties versus lefties, what I could do with guys on base, what I could do multiple times through the lineup. These things are all just giving yourself more options, and I think a lot of guys just see the path of velocity and they say that's the one that's going to work for me, and probably it is the most likely one, but everyone's going down that path right now.
Right.
And if you want to be an outlier, you got to go in a different direction sometimes. And I'm saying this with the wholehearted believing that you should try and maximize your velocity as a pitcher right now.
Sure.
But there are other avenues we can explore at the same time.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that it all has to be that.
Keep throwing so I stay warm.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to get to was going to the other side. So we went to the Wake Forest Summit, and they talked about Chase Burns, right?
Yep.
They wanted to get a little bit more carry on the fastball. They went through these drill progressions. All seemed to be solid, but the number one thing they did to get a little bit more carry in
they moved
the
him
end
this
zone,
way.
They moved them over. So can you talk about, moving an environmental constraint like that and the effects that it can have?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on how it's portrayed, right? So coaching is so much about language, and so much of that language is earned and discussed without words, right? And it's like, what's my resume originally coming in? How much are you going to trust me, right? How well do I develop a relationship with you? Now, when I develop that relationship with you, how much am I bringing you into the conversation of here's why we see we need to make these changes, which I think Corey does an amazing job of there, right? Obviously, they're unbelievable, but all of those things are so crucial to that actually working. And then it comes down to, okay, how are you going to introduce that? Are you going to explicitly introduce it? Hey, we're moving you to this side of the rubber because I wanted to create more contralateral tilt, and I want you to get slightly more on top of the baseball, right? If I do that, now what are you conscious of? That.
Yeah.
Right? Which, if you're an elite level thrower, he's an elite level thrower, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay for you to think about things in that way. I can tell you, and I think you've seen it, when you explicitly coach a high school kid like that, you create a host of issues oftentimes because they don't have the perceptual feel of their movement strategy as well as, let's say, the pro guy. And I mean, you might as well call them professionals, right, at the level they're playing. But I think how you bring that in is very interesting, right? So initially, one thing that I might do is if eventually I want to get him to over here, I might put him on the opposite side, but move the target in the opposite manner. Right? And then start messing with how that is being delivered to him. I might change the rules of the game.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Like I might move him up closer and make him try and execute it. I may pull him all the way over here, like over-exaggerate it and have to get him to come back to it. And if he needs some convincing, maybe I'll have the TrackMan on during some of those times, because it's not just convincing him that I'm right, it's also, I don't know that I'm right? Like I could be wrong about moving him this way, and that could really fuck him up.
For sure.
And I think that's probably the largest mistake most coaches make, is that we assume we know. And we probably don't know that much.
Yeah. So I'll go all the way over here, kind of just talk about the ramifications of moving to that third base side too. So what's going to end up happening for me to redirect back towards home is I'm actually going to allow myself to get to extension a little bit earlier here in the throw.
Okay.
So that vertical takeoff that I was talking about before that I don't want to do necessarily on that side-to-side pattern, it's going to be a little bit more up. I'm going to allow myself to fall, and then we're going to work through the target. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a little bit more of that glove side movement on the fastball. So we'll probably get a little bit of ride cut to get across on this one.
Yeah. So we lost some horizontal for
Jay,
sure.
I'll have you go all the way over there, yeah. That's good there. So I was starting to work back towards the x-axis a little bit, and that's where basically for my cutter delivery, if I'm trying to work on that, I'm going to move myself over, because everything has to do with tilt. So if I'm leaning, extending, and getting that tilt with the front side, the hand's going to climb with it. For that cutter, I'm trying to get that close to 12 o'clock here, so I'll throw a couple cutters off of that.
What I love about that too is you're not trying to fight the system right out the chute, right? So you're like, hey, if I'm struggling with my cutter a little bit, I'm gonna actually aid myself initially so that I can get the feel.
Right.
And then you might start working your way back towards your normal slot there.
Right, and what people will see off of this, they'll say you're throwing from different slots, different release points. You know, the hitter's going to be able to see that. Ultimately, what we're trying to build with our pitchers is awareness of where their center of mass is.
Yeah, there we go.
So if we can control that and the pitcher has good awareness, they're going to start to figure out where they need to get to on each pitch without feeling like they need to over-manipulate the hand so much.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say to this is, like, you're very aware right now, right?
Yeah.
And if I wanted to remove some awareness, all I have to do is add some pressure.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, like, I could, we can be in the middle of this drill, and then all of a sudden as a coach I could say, all right, hey, listen, you're going to face these next two guys.
Right.
They're going to step in the box, but you're going to throw it from over here. They know it, you know it, we all know it, why you're throwing from over here. And then a couple things could happen, right? We could see how the pitch shape might not profile that way. Why? Oh, well, you're compensating out of it.
Yep.
And now I have to think as a coach, okay, wait a minute. Are there some structural issues that are preventing this from actually occurring? Can I alter any of those structural issues? Will there be a change? Am I doing this during the season? Hell fucking no. Am I doing this in the off season? Probably, right? And it's like, okay, so let's say pitch profile goes exactly how we want and it over-exemplifies while batters are in there. Awesome. Can we work back towards where he normally was and hold these patterns?
Right.
And I think that's like the art of coaching there.
Yeah, ultimately these are all over-exaggerations to start, and we're trying to bring it back into the center somewhere. But at no point was I like cueing any different kind of arm action there. I was basically just dictating my posture and direction, and allowing the body to move through the throw to just accomplish the task of getting the ball to Jason. Yeah,
and I think that's absolutely fine when you're dealing with somebody of your caliber, right? If I'm dealing with a high school kid, I'm probably not dictating any of that initially, right? I'm just going to alter the environment at first, right? Then maybe I'll add some variability to the task. Then maybe eventually, if like it's not working and I've cleared all other structural issues, maybe I'll add some physical constraints to it, change where, we're starting from, or add a tap or something along those lines. But I also think like you can't be afraid to scrap it. Like scrap that, move on, like go to the next thing, maybe venture back in some other way.
Yeah. I'm like, good. I'll throw a couple fastballs. That'll be good. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, dude, first of all, man, it's gotta be, it's so crazy to listen to you talk about your career, because I listen to some of the guys now, even high school guys, or college guys that we have that are like, you know, high draft like potential and everything like that. And just listening to you have talked about your career and the stress that you were applying to yourself to make this a living and, you know, do those things. I just cannot imagine that people can't fathom how that stress impacts your capacity to throw hard.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. There's a reason I throw harder now than when I played.
Of course, yeah.
All this weight that I've put on every throw is now removed. I mean, we got cameras going today, so a little bit more weight, but I sympathize so much with the guys going through it, because what we're all preaching is velocity, 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 and there are other avenues we need to explore, especially at the highest level. Now, if you're a high school kid or a college kid and you're trying to at least get your foot in the door, vitally important that we at least have the baseline velocity to be competitive. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Ultimately, like pitching is, we're trying to make them make a decision as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So if we don't have that velocity, it doesn't matter what the pitch shapes are going to be.
Right, and it doesn't matter whether you're throwing strikes or not. Like, the throwing strikes or not argument, I can't fucking stand, because at the end of the day, that's a task constraint that's not going away.
Yeah.
Like, you have to throw a strike.
Yep.
Period. So, like, velocity isn't in the absence of strikes.
Yeah. I'll do a couple things on change-ups too here, and just off-speed pitches in general. Can I get a couple more, Jay? So I think I'll just throw a couple of warm-up. What guys struggle with on the changeup oftentimes is they feel like they need to over-pronate that pitch. If you look at where I'm going to get to on both of these pitches, on most of these changeups, you'll still see about 30 degrees of cut, right? So that seam shift of feeling the hand actually work underneath and then work to pronation is actually what we're trying to get from most changeups. So it's trying to feel that low to high feeling rather than, you know, that top to
turnover,
in, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So we'll show a couple here.
Do you have to get new gear?
No, I already have
New team, new colors.
Yeah, I got the blue stuff. Non-fixed as a camo.
Like how my brain works?
We'll go one more. And what you're going to see this year, so you see kind of the sweeper come in, and we guys with two sliders. So you have the short one and the big one.
Yeah.
What I think you're going to start to see is guys with two different changeups now. So we're going to have that arm side one, circle change that we're seam shifting, and then some split kick change variation off of that. So we'll basically have, for most pitchers, kind of two off-speed pitches on working both sides. So we'll have the shorter kind of vertical changeup, then we'll have that arm side one. We'll have a shorter vertical slider and one working bigger off of that. Now, is every guy going to throw 9 pitches? Probably not, but I don't know. You should probably try. I mean, we have every guy here with our pros at least throwing some version of a kick change to see if something's there. So let's throw a couple of those now, too. Hang in there, Jay.
I mean, hang in there. This dude's got to play soon.
So a little bit more of an up and down profile on this. We're basically just killing spin and letting the axis kind of just take it downhill. Rib cage. We'll go one more.
That was a soft dart to the ribs.
Damn it.
One more.
I was doing so good, too.
It's all right. We can't have you getting signed.
Lost it.
How about, so right there, right? So you're missing back-to-back, 3 in a row, actually, arm side, right? How do you slow this down now? You know what I mean? Like,
How do I find the adjustment here, pitch to pitch?
yeah. Let's assume those are all different pitches. We're in a game, right? 3 balls in a row.
Yeah.
What's your process?
So that's it's actually a really good question. I'm not sure I have like a fantastic answer. For me, anytime I had arm side high misses consistently,
Sure.
it was this going early.
Okay.
Right? So I had to, without taking it like too internal, the only thing I would tell myself in my throw is that front shoulder needed to stay in my peripherals as long as possible.
Okay.
So that if I felt like I was losing that early, I knew everything was flying open, probably going to miss arm side. If I kept this in line, I felt like my direction would be better. I could stay through the ball.
What about, why would that all of a sudden happen in the middle of a game?
Probably because I'm someone who doesn't really rely too much on the lower half. I'm a very top-driven thrower.
Okay.
So as like fatigue is setting in, I start to use this more and more, call on it a little bit more and more. Ball starts to flatten out, starts working up in the zone a little bit.
Yeah. I was having a combo with a guy the other day, one of our pitchers, and I made the remark to him that mental skills stuff or like slowing the game down, right? The game starts moving on you, right? What is the language that's being spoken internally? Because that's the loudest voice we have, right? And ball 1, hit batter, runner on first. Is it immediately like, fuck, the ramifications of this, right? And what that leads to. And, nobody likes doing mental skills stuff when shit is going bad.
Yeah.
Everybody avoids doing mental skills stuff when shit is going good. So it's like, I'm just looking for that hope of a Band-Aid when I'm in that in-between state. And then when you're too deep into like shit is going wrong, it's really hard to work your way back out of that.
Well, you just saw actually a mini example of it.
Sure.
I didn't process a single one of those misses because I was
Exactly.
embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because they were on camera.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get the ball back quick and throw
Right.
the next pitch, and so that everyone forgot that I just threw a bad pitch.
Right.
There was no processing of what potentially went wrong in the throw or
Sure.
where I could find any kind of correction. It was just like, let's find the feel, hopefully.
Yeah.
We'll get it there, somewhere close to there, and then people forget that I threw that bad pitch. I think a lot of what guys have to start doing, and something I struggled with when I was playing, is processing the information while it's happening, not living in the past, not thinking about future failures, thinking about what just happened in that immediate moment and what can I do to correct it on the next pitch. And that's just like really getting towards being in the moment all the time. Easier said than done. But I think a lot of us, when we get into the game, turn our brain off, go into compete mode, and just think, I'm going to try harder. I'm going to give more effort, and that's going to correct. It's really about how can I process better.
It's, I can akin it to a boxer, right? If a boxer gets emotional in a moment, or a fighter of any sort, they get emotional in a moment, they're going to get beat because the technicality will take them in a heartbeat, right? Same goes for a pitcher. If you become emotional in that moment and just think, hey, listen, I'm going to fucking out-velo everybody right now, chances are in today's game, unless you got something 97 miles an hour or plus, you're probably not doing that.
Yeah.
And you got to think about where the next execution needs to occur. And, I think we get a little bit of this like conformity bias, or not conformity bias, like the propensity that we think just because I threw a ball there, the next one's going to occur again. I'm going to throw another ball, right? Now this is like spiraling, and I'm going to have a walk. And now that runner's going to score because there's no outs, and I'm going to get a bleeder and an error, a bloop single, and then there you go. I've given up 2 runs and I'm out of the game.
Yep.
And I've literally talked to kids where that is the thought process after like the second ball of the game.
For sure.
And there's no way you're going to win or be successful if that's the narrative that you're allowing to exist within your brain.
Yeah, I was the all-time guy of the rapid escalation of negative thoughts occurring in a way that was completely unrealistic. It's a similar thing. You could go 2-0 to start the game, and I'm already thinking about how I've given up 7 runs. I didn't get out of the 3rd inning. My ERA is now over 6. I'm going to get sent back to AA. I'm never going to make it. My girlfriend's going to leave me. My parents are going to be mad. And all of a sudden, you're way down the road, and it's the first batter of the game, right? Or the second batter of the game. So I wish there was an easier way to do it, but it's constant work. Like you're talking about with mental skills training. There is not a one-fits-all solution to this, and it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant process over and over again.
Yeah, I think a lot of athletes are scared of mental skills because we've been so dominated with analytics that they've now been told analytics are bad, don't have those in your mind, just go out and pitch, right? And now we've taken thought away from them too. Catchers call everything. They don't even call it anymore, just gets told to them, right? So we've literally created a robot out on the mound, and we're wondering why the robot is not acting like a robot. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah, like if you're not calling pitches, if you're not thinking through at bats, sequences, where are your thoughts going to go?
But
internal
negative.
And towards the past and towards the future, right?
100%.
How can you expect a pitcher to work through a sequence if they're not calling it, if they're not thinking it through? I think there's a real, I don't want to call it a problem because I understand why it happens, but like there's a real disservice you're doing to a pitcher when you're constantly calling pitches for them, because all they're going to do is go inward with their thoughts and going to take it to the past and the future because they have no thoughts about what's going on in that bat because you've taken that out of their hands.
Yeah, one of the best pitchers I ever played around when we were in college, he knew the starting lineup, like he was a starter, knew the lineup, obviously, right? Knew how he was going to approach them the first, second, and third time through the lineup based on the scouting report that he had for them. Now, whether that went correct or not, he had the plan in his mind, and what he said was what made him feel good about that was if shit started hitting the fan, I could just go back to my plan. Mm-hmm. I can stop for a moment, and I could say, wait a minute, I know how to attack this guy, right? And he could step back up and reapproach his plan, regardless of what has occurred, because he can't impact any of that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's enough of that being done. I think there's a lot of kids going out on the mound and just trying to use their skill to beat anybody they can.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with getting pitches called for you. I think it's the communication that happens between innings, before games, after games, where you're actually involving them in part of the learning process. When you talk about, Arkansas, when we were down at the Wake Forest meeting, they let the pitchers call their own pitches, but they better be prepared with the reason why. You know, they're going to have a pregame meeting where they discuss it. They're going to have a post-outing meeting where they talk about it. All those college teams where even they are getting pitches called for them, there's a lot of preparation and communication that happens in between, and they feel involved in the process of what's going on out there, and ultimately that's going to make them want to help solve the problem of how do I get that guy out anyways.
Yeah, so one of the leading factors to confidence is you can derive it from the self-determination theory, right? How well do I feel equipped to actually accomplish what I'm setting out to accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. And the being involved section of that, right, there's 3 parameters. One of them is autonomy. When you bring me in and you make me a part of the process that's deciding whether or how we're going to approach this hitter, you're ingraining autonomy for that player over their career, right? They have control. They are involved. They have authority to this, and even if ultimately you're making the decision as the coach, they have at least weighed in on it. Mm-hmm. And the power behind that is immense. And it changes somebody's perspective when they step on the mound. Their initial level of confidence, because they're so overly prepared for the moment, is insane. And, we always look at these guys that we call weirdos, like, the Tom Bradys, the Kobe Bryants, the Max Scherzers, but I guarantee you they're immensely prepared with their game plan. They've watched hours and hours of film. They know the scouting report inside and out. They have the heat maps on every single guy. They understand that day how their pitch is working in the bullpen and how their plan needs to adjust so that they don't go out on the field and just all of a sudden just throw this bullshit slider that was sucking that day and it gets titted. They realize, hey, I have to adjust the plan here. And I think a lot of our guys are like, yeah, I didn't have a slider that day. Well, when did you realize you didn't have a slider? In catch play. I'm like, Communicate that to your catcher, communicate that to your coach, make an adjustment to the game plan. That's on you.
Yeah.
Stop pointing the finger that the coach called a slider and you couldn't execute it.
For sure.
If your slider sucked that day, because that's going to fucking happen, make the adjustment. Tell people. Switch your plan up.
Switch the plan up. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Hopefully you have another pitch that you can lean on.
Yeah.
And survive.
Solve the problem.
Yes.
Right?
Go out and survive
Yeah.
and beat
Right.
the other team. Actually compete. Don't just try and go out and showcase yourself.
Right.
So this was cool. I like
good.
this a lot. It's cool too because it's showcasing how deep you actually understand what you're doing, how then we can enact coaching that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like the process a lot. And I think an interesting one would be the two of you going over where you like catchers setting up, what you don't like seeing out of some catchers, and then for you, how you manage a pitcher in all those settings. Like, what happens when you see a guy, like you see a guy spiraling, like, yeah, right. But like, I'll be honest with you. Ready? So like, if ever I was like missing with my fastball, I had absolute utter confidence in my slider. I could rip that motherfucker on the outside corner and it would break across the plate. Didn't matter who was there.
Yeah.
And like, no, but I get what you mean. Like,
Yeah, some guys have that fixed pitch.
yeah, where it just, for whatever reason, maybe how the way I stepped, posture, whatever, for me, that was just the pitch that, like, I felt comfortable.
What you just said about communication, that was huge. Like, you have to communicate that to your catcher.
Well, I think they get
Especially if they
afraid.
haven't taught you before.
I think they get afraid.
Probably.
I think they're like, oh, I can't admit weakness.
Yeah.
I can't admit that I can't find my slider.
Yeah.
Dude, in the end of my career, I had a fastball and a slider. And there were days where that slider would just spin in place. And I'm like, oh my God, all right. And like, catcher would come out, because like I'm coming in, there's runners on and shit, and he would come out and I'm like, Mikey, we ain't got no slider today, buddy, so we gotta move this fastball all over the place. Just gotta get him out in front, I'll change the speed on the fastball. They won't all be the same thing. Because I think that's the other thing too. I don't think people pitch.
Yeah.
Every pitch is just as hard as you can, as opposed to being like, hey, I can take some off this fastball and get it to move.
Yep.
And get it to do something slightly different.
Those are the guys that are fun to catch, too.
Yeah, well, generally they don't throw that hard. Because if they do throw hard, they're just getting up there and they're like, go fuck yourself.
Then it becomes a game of chess.
Yeah.
How can you set a guy up?
Yeah.
That's where it becomes fun, and that's, I think, what is getting lost by coaches calling pitches from the dugout.
Yeah, but I think what we're seeing too a lot of times is like, ultimately, yes, the player has to execute, but if the coach is really good, they're trying to win the chess game in like the first inning, right? Every inning that their plan goes accordingly, like one other batter doesn't get up, they're ahead in the chess game, right? Like if I was coaching bullshit high school baseball, right? I had a high school baseball hitter could be somebody totally different the next day. You can't even do a scouting report on that kind of kid, right? So it's just like, I gotta figure out what type of pitcher do I have today? Like, what's he looking like? Is he emotionally? What pitches are working in there? And you're trying to craft a plan like in seconds before a game. And then it's like, okay, hey, if I can get 4 batters up this inning, right? And I know I got the 4-batter done, okay, cool. Next 3 innings, I'm in a good spot right now.
But I will say, like, all that goes towards a winning outcome, not necessarily a developmental outcome there.
Totally agree.
And there's probably a balance somewhere in between, where there's, some allowances with pitch calling, and there's also some dictation coming from the coaches of like, this is the direction we need to go in these situations. I'll explain that to you after. Maybe I'll give you a little bit more freedom in a different circumstance, but here I need to actually like drive the bus a little bit.
And I think, again, it goes back to communication, right? Like, a big practice I tried when I was being the pitching coach, right, was they would come in after an inning, and I would literally walk through each at-bat with them. Obviously, we're not walking through their bats if they got their tits lit.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, go on the bench. We're probably going to somebody else. But, like, what I'm getting at is, like, if we came in, mediocre inning, great inning, whatever, we're probably going through the pitches, and I want to hear from them. All I'm looking to hear is what is the confidence that they have in executing that pitch for the rest of today? Because it's going to give me confidence to call it. I know they're going to want to see that. And, you know, when you can get on the same page, like, too, when you're calling pitches for a guy, and the catcher, I mean, we were fortunate at Fox Lane, we had some really, really good catchers. I mean, there was times where he wasn't even looking back. He was already calling the pitch because he knew what we were going through.
Yep.
Makes it a little easier when all you got is 3, but pitches. And one's not really a pitch.